A young nurse donates blood to a stranger, unaware he's a millionaire single dad who will soon. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into today's story. Back to our main character, Sarah. Sarah Monroe wasn't like most nurses. She wasn't the kind of person who drew attention to herself, nor did she want to. Her life was lived in quiet humility, focusing on taking care of others rather than herself. A hardworking, compassionate young woman, Sarah had always been the one to lend a hand whenever someone needed it, even if it meant sacrificing her own comfort. It was one of those late nights at the hospital when Sarah decided to make a small but significant gesture. The blood donation drive was in full swing, and Sarah had already been working a long shift. Yet, something about this particular night felt different. Maybe it was the exhaustion that had begun to weigh on her, or maybe it was the silent pull to do something kind for someone who might not expect it. The clinic was bustling with volunteers, doctors, and patients, but there was one man sitting in the corner, almost unnoticed by the rest. His appearance wasn't remarkable. He had an unkempt look, his clothes damp from the rain, and his eyes tired, with a faint shadow of distress. Sarah didn't think much of it at first. She was busy coordinating the donations when he approached her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice soft but carrying an edge of urgency. "Could you spare $10? I've been waiting for the bus for hours, and I can't seem to find the fare." Sarah looked at him, his weathered appearance making her hesitate, but the look in his eyes, a mix of genuine need and gratitude, compelled her. She had only $10 left to her name. The small amount was meant for a meal after her shift, but she couldn't ignore the sense of empathy that rose in her chest. Without a second thought, she handed him the money. "Here, take it. I hope it helps," she said, offering a warm smile. The man's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, he seemed almost speechless. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah smiled softly before returning to her duties, unaware that this simple act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. The night went on, and Sarah continued working tirelessly, but she couldn't shake the memory of the stranger. She wondered if he would make it home, or if he'd end up on the streets, alone in the cold. A few weeks later, Sarah found herself attending a charity gala, an event she never would have imagined herself at. She had been invited by one of the doctors, and despite feeling out of place in the sea of wealthy guests, she went. After all, it was a rare opportunity, and her best friend, Jenny, insisted she go. As Sarah stepped into the lavish hall, she could barely believe the grandeur of it all. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the room was filled with well-dressed people laughing and mingling. Sarah couldn't help but feel like an outsider. She had been raised in a modest home, and this world of glitz and glamour felt foreign to her. She was about to turn and leave when a familiar voice stopped her. "Sarah?" Sarah turned, her heart skipping a beat as she faced the man she had helped that night, the one she had given her last $10 to. But now, standing before her in a well-tailored suit, he looked nothing like the man she had seen at the blood drive. His hair was neatly combed, and his face, though tired, seemed to have an air of confidence she hadn't noticed before. "Daniel?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. He smiled, his expression unreadable. "Yes, it's me. I'm Daniel Carter." Sarah stared at him, her mind racing. He wasn't just any stranger. He was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company. She could hardly believe it. The man she had helped wasn't just anyone in need. He was someone who had more wealth than she could ever dream of. As her mind tried to process the shock, Daniel stepped closer, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of warmth and something deeper, something that made her heart flutter despite herself. "I never forgot what you did for me," he said, his voice low. "And I promised myself I'd repay your kindness." Sarah felt a rush of emotions. Surprise, disbelief, and a little bit of shame flooded her. She hadn't expected anything from him, not even a thank you. The last thing she wanted was to feel indebted or to be seen as someone looking for handouts. But here he was, offering something she never imagined. "You don't have to repay me," Sarah said quickly, but her words trailed off as Daniel smiled softly. I know I don't have to, but I want to. That's why I invited you here tonight, he said, motioning to the gala around them. I've been watching you, Sarah. Your heart, your kindness. I want to offer you something, more than just this night. As Sarah listened to him speak, her disbelief grew. Daniel wasn't just a millionaire CEO. He was offering her something she had never expected, an opportunity, a chance to change her life. And with that offer came a complicated mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. Sarah had no idea where this would lead, but she was about to find out. What was supposed to be a simple act of kindness had just set her on a path that would challenge everything she knew about love, wealth, and trust. She was about to discover that the person she had helped was not just a stranger, but someone who would change her world forever. As Sarah stood there in front of Daniel, her mind raced with confusion and disbelief. She had always lived her life with the belief that good deeds should be done without expecting anything in return. Yet here she was, face to face with a man who had the power to change everything. Daniel Carter, the CEO of a successful tech company, was not just thanking her for a small act of kindness. No, he was offering her something much more significant. She had given him $10, the last of her money, on that rainy night, never imagining that it would lead to this moment. I don't know what to say, Sarah finally managed, her voice low, still in shock. Daniel smiled, his warm eyes reassuring her. You don't have to say anything, Sarah. I've been watching you for a while now. Your kindness, your work ethic, it's rare. I want to help you. His words lingered in the air, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of both awe and discomfort. She was no stranger to hard work, but she had never imagined that someone with Daniel's power and wealth would take such an interest in her. Help me, she repeated, still trying to make sense of the situation. How? Daniel took a deep breath, his expression turning serious. I know that things haven't been easy for you, Sarah, and I want to offer you an opportunity. A job, a chance to work with my foundation. You can make a difference in so many lives, just like you've made a difference in mine. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She had been struggling to make ends meet for so long, and now this man, this stranger, was offering her a chance to work at his foundation, a foundation that was known for its charitable work worldwide. It seemed too good to be true. I don't know if I'm the right person for this, Sarah said, her voice faltering. I don't have a lot of experience in that field. I'm just a nurse, Daniel. Daniel shook his head. That's exactly why I want you. You have something that money can't buy. You care. That's what we need. I'll teach you everything you need to know. Sarah felt a mix of emotions. She had never been one to accept help from others, especially someone as wealthy and influential as Daniel. She had always prided herself on being independent, on doing things on her own. But something about Daniel's offer struck a chord deep within her. I don't know. Sarah began, her mind swirling. This is all so sudden. I'm just a small-town girl trying to get by. Daniel's smile softened. And that's exactly what makes you perfect for this. You're real. And we need people like you who haven't forgotten what it's like to struggle. Sarah swallowed hard, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She had spent most of her life caring for others, putting their needs before her own. But now, for the first time, someone was offering to take care of her, to help her grow, to give her a chance at something bigger than what she had ever imagined. It was overwhelming. I'm not sure I can accept, Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. I've worked hard for everything I have. I don't want to feel like I owe you anything. Daniel stepped closer, his presence commanding yet gentle. Sarah, you don't owe me anything. You've already given me something more valuable than you can imagine. You've shown me kindness when I needed it most. That's why I'm offering you this. Not because I expect something in return, but because I believe in you. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. She had spent so many years hiding behind her walls, afraid to trust, afraid to believe that good things could happen to her. But Daniel's words, his sincerity, made her believe, maybe for the first time, that she was worthy of something better. As the night wore on, Sarah felt a shift inside her. The weight of her struggles, her doubts, seemed to lighten just a little. Maybe this was the opportunity she had been waiting for, the chance to break free from the limitations she had placed on herself. Okay, Sarah said, her voice steady now, a sense of resolve settling over her. I'll do it. I'll give it a try. Daniel's eyes lit up with approval, and he nodded. Good. I knew you would. You won't regret this, Sarah. I promise you. And just like that, Sarah's life began to change. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful. As the evening came to a close, Daniel handed her a business card. "I'll have my assistant call you tomorrow with the details," he said. "This is just the beginning, Sarah. I'm excited to see where this goes." Sarah took the card, feeling a sense of gratitude and uncertainty all at once. She had no idea what she was getting into, but one thing was certain. Her life had just taken an unexpected turn. The simple act of helping a stranger had led her to a path she never thought she would walk. And as she left the gala, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of a new chapter, or was it just the first step towards something even greater? The next few days passed in a blur for Sarah. She couldn't stop thinking about her conversation with Daniel at the gala, the offer he had made, and the opportunity that was now sitting on her doorstep. She had never imagined her life could change so drastically with one small act of kindness. The following morning, true to his word, Daniel's assistant called her with the details. The conversation was brief, professional, and to the point, but Sarah felt the weight of it all settling in. She was about to start working at one of the most prestigious foundations in the country, a foundation led by none other than Daniel Carter himself. Despite her excitement, she couldn't shake the feeling of being an imposter. She was just a nurse from a small town, after all. What did she know about running a foundation, especially one that dealt with such high-profile projects? As she arrived at the foundation's office on her first day, her heart pounded in her chest. The building was everything she had imagined, sleek, modern, and filled with people who looked like they knew exactly what they were doing. Sarah felt small in comparison, but she tried to push those feelings aside as she made her way to the reception desk. The receptionist, a polished woman with a sharp smile, greeted her and handed her a visitor's badge. "Mr. Carter is expecting you," she said, her tone businesslike but not unkind. Sarah nodded and followed the receptionist to an elevator that took her to the top floor of the building. As the doors opened, Sarah was struck by the view. The office was breathtaking, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city below. Daniel stood by the windows, his back to her, looking every bit the powerful CEO that he was. He turned as she entered, his face lighting up with a warm smile. "Sarah, I'm glad you're here," he said, walking over to greet her. He extended his hand, and she shook it, feeling a bit nervous but trying to mask it with a smile. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "I'm not sure what I can bring to the table, but I'll do my best." Daniel chuckled, his eyes twinkling with warmth. "I know you will. That's why I chose you. You bring something money can't buy, genuine care, something that is sorely lacking in the world of business." Sarah felt a small wave of relief wash over her. If nothing else, she knew Daniel truly believed in her, even if she still wasn't sure she was ready for the challenge. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began to settle into her new role. She worked closely with Daniel's team, learning the ins and outs of the foundation's operations. It wasn't easy, and there were days when she felt overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the projects they were tackling, but she also felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. She wasn't just helping people on a small scale anymore. She was part of something bigger, something that could truly make a difference in the world. And yet, despite all the progress she had made, there were moments when she still doubted herself. The feelings of being an outsider never fully left her. She saw the way the other staff members interacted with each other, how they spoke in terms of budgets, reports, and meetings. It was a language she was just starting to learn, and she often felt like she was playing catch-up. One afternoon, as Sarah sat in her office going over some notes, Daniel stopped by for a quick check-in. He had a habit of doing this, always popping in to see how she was doing. "How's everything going, Sarah?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled weakly. "It's going okay. It's just a lot. I feel like I'm still getting the hang of everything." Daniel studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "I know it's tough at first, but you're doing great. The thing that sets you apart from the others is your heart. You care about the work. That's all that matters." His words made Sarah feel a little lighter, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that she was underperforming. Later that evening, Sarah found herself walking through the foundation's art gallery, a place Daniel had insisted she visit to see the latest collection being displayed. As she wandered through the room, admiring the pieces, she found herself lost in thought. She had always loved art, but it wasn't something she had ever pursued seriously. It felt like another world entirely, one that was out of her reach. But as she walked through the gallery, she noticed something that caught her eye, a sketchbook resting on one of the pedestals. She reached for it, flipping through the pages. The drawings were beautiful, full of emotion and raw talent. It wasn't the work of a professional artist, but of someone with a deep, personal connection to their craft. Sarah felt a wave of recognition. She knew what it was like to pour your soul into something, even when it seemed impossible. She closed the sketchbook and stood there for a moment, reflecting on her own journey. Maybe she didn't have all the answers. Maybe she wasn't the most experienced person in the room. But she did have heart, and that was enough. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts, and she turned to find Daniel standing behind her. "I see you found my secret," he said, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "This is my sketchbook. I've been drawing since I was a kid, but it's something I keep to myself. Just a way to unwind." Sarah smiled, her admiration for him growing. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It's more than that," Daniel replied, his voice sincere. "It's a reminder that no matter how far I go, I can never forget where I came from. I want you to remember that too, Sarah. Never lose sight of what matters most." The following weeks felt like a whirlwind for Sarah as she continued to adjust to her new life at the foundation. Every day brought new challenges and new learning experiences, but it also brought new moments of doubt. She was still the same small-town girl who had never dreamed of being in the corporate world, let alone working for one of the wealthiest and most influential men she'd ever met. Despite her progress, Sarah couldn't help but feel like an outsider. She often found herself comparing herself to the other employees, who had years of experience and were far more polished in their professional demeanor. She couldn't help but question whether she truly belonged there. One afternoon, Daniel invited Sarah to a lunch meeting with some of the foundation's major donors. It was a formal event, held at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, and Sarah was both excited and nervous. She hadn't been in a setting like this before, and the idea of sitting down with powerful people made her uneasy. "Don't worry, Sarah," Daniel said when he noticed her nerves. "You've been doing an incredible job here, and you're more than capable. Just be yourself." Sarah nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. She knew Daniel had faith in her, but it was hard to shake the feeling that she didn't quite fit into this world. The restaurant was luxurious, with crystal chandeliers and soft, elegant lighting. The atmosphere was filled with the low murmur of high-profile conversations, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a bit out of place. As they sat down at the large table, Daniel introduced her to the group, all of whom were eager to meet her. They asked her questions about the foundation, about her work, and about her background, and Sarah did her best to answer. As the conversation flowed, Sarah slowly began to relax. She spoke with confidence, sharing her experiences, her passion for helping others, and her excitement about the impact the foundation was making. She realized, in that moment, that her worth wasn't defined by her past or her lack of experience. It was her heart, her desire to make a difference, that mattered. As the lunch continued, Daniel watched Sarah closely, a proud smile on his face. He had seen her grow so much in such a short period of time, and he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of admiration for her. He knew she had more to offer than anyone could imagine, and he was glad he had given her the opportunity to prove herself. After the lunch, as they walked back to the office, Daniel turned to Sarah, his expression thoughtful. "You did great today," he said. "I knew you would. You have this way of connecting with people. It's something special." Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was a small compliment, but it meant the world to her. She had never felt like she had a gift for anything before, but hearing Daniel say that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she was starting to find her place in the world. A few days later, Sarah found herself in the hospital again. It had been a while since she had stepped back into the familiar halls, and she couldn't help but feel a wave of nostalgia wash over her as she walked through the doors. She was there to visit her mother, who had been undergoing treatment for some time. As she made her way to the patient room, she was greeted by the nurse who had been taking care of her mom. "How's she doing?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with concern. The nurse smiled warmly. "She's doing well. She's stronger than we thought." Sarah's heart lifted at the news, but as she walked into the room and saw her mother lying in bed, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. She had been so focused on her new life, on the foundation and the opportunities that had come her way, that she hadn't been able to spend as much time with her mother as she would have liked. Her mother smiled when she saw her, her tired eyes lighting up. "You look happy, Sarah," she said softly. "I am," Sarah replied, her voice catching in her throat. "But I still feel guilty. I wish I could be here more for you." Her mother reached out and took her hand. "You've been doing what you're meant to do. You're helping others. That's what matters." Sarah squeezed her mother's hand, the words sinking deep into her heart. She realized her mother was right. It wasn't just about being there physically. It was about making a difference, about using her gifts to help others in whatever way she could. That was the purpose she had been searching for, and she had found it, even if it meant being far away from home sometimes. As Sarah sat by her mother's bedside, she felt a deep sense of peace. She had come so far, and she was starting to realize that her new life, her new purpose, was just as important as the life she had left behind. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was someone who could make a real impact in the world, and that realization filled her with a quiet, yet powerful, sense of fulfillment. Daniel's belief in her, the kindness she had shown to a stranger, and her own determination to help others had brought her to this point. Sarah knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The days continued to pass quickly for Sarah, each one bringing a new challenge, but also a deeper sense of fulfillment. Her role at the foundation had expanded beyond anything she had ever expected. Not only was she learning new things every day, but she was also becoming an integral part of the team. Daniel had kept his promise. He didn't just offer her a job. He showed her the ropes, guiding her with patience and belief in her abilities. He would often stop by her office, checking in on how she was doing, offering advice, and reminding her of the impact she was already making. Sarah was starting to realize that she wasn't just working for a wealthy CEO. She was working with him to change lives, including her own. She was starting to feel at home in a way she hadn't in years. Yet, despite all the progress she had made, Sarah couldn't help but feel a wave of uncertainty creeping back in. It was late one evening, after a long meeting, when Sarah sat alone in her office, reflecting on everything she had accomplished. She was still the same girl from a small town, with no business background, no formal education in charity work. How could she continue in this world, one so different from everything she had ever known? But just as the weight of her thoughts began to settle in, there was a knock on her door. Sarah looked up to see Daniel standing in the doorway, his usual warm smile on his face. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. Sarah nodded, grateful for the familiar presence. Daniel walked in and took a seat across from her, his eyes scanning the papers scattered across her desk. "You're doing great, Sarah," he said, breaking the silence. "But I can tell something's on your mind. What's going on?" Sarah sighed, rubbing her temples as if to push away the doubt. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I'm still learning so much, and sometimes I feel like I'm not making enough of a difference. Maybe I don't belong here." Daniel leaned forward, his gaze soft yet firm. "Sarah, you belong here because you bring something no one else can. You're real, and you care. That's what's been missing from this world of business and wealth. People have forgotten that sometimes the most important thing we can do is just show up for others." Sarah looked down, processing his words. She had never thought of herself as someone special, but Daniel seemed to see something in her that she couldn't even recognize. She was starting to believe him, though it was hard to shake off the voice in her head telling her she wasn't enough. Daniel continued, his voice steady. "Look, this world isn't always going to be easy, but you're making an impact every single day. You've already touched so many lives just by being here, just by being you. I didn't hire you because of your resume. I hired you because of your heart. Trust that." Sarah felt her eyes well up with tears. She had never had someone believe in her this way before. She had worked so hard to make a difference. And here was Daniel, a man she barely knew at first, offering her more than just a job. He was offering her belief, encouragement, and a chance to see her own potential. She had been so focused on proving herself that she hadn't realized how far she had already come. "Thank you, Daniel," Sarah said softly, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't know what to say." He smiled, standing up and walking over to the window, looking out over the city. "You don't have to say anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're changing the world, Sarah, one person at a time." As Sarah sat there, her emotions swirling, she realized that this was the moment she had been waiting for. She had spent so much time doubting herself, but Daniel's words had given her the courage to believe in her own abilities. She wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was part of something much bigger than herself. That night, Sarah went home with a renewed sense of purpose. She sat at her kitchen table, thinking about everything Daniel had said. She had always been the kind of person who wanted to help, but now she realized that helping others didn't have to be confined to just the people she could see or touch. Her work at the foundation had the power to reach far beyond the walls of the building, far beyond anything she could have ever imagined. She felt proud, but more than that, she felt empowered. It wasn't just about the work she was doing. It was about who she was becoming. The next day, when Sarah arrived at the foundation, she felt a new sense of confidence. She had already come so far, but now she was ready to take on whatever came next. Daniel was right. She was making a difference, and she had so much more to offer than she had ever believed. As she walked into the office, she smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of her journey. The foundation was no longer just a place of work. For her, it was where she was meant to be, making a real difference in the world, one act of kindness at a time. In the weeks that followed, Sarah began to truly settle into her new role at the foundation, gaining confidence with each passing day. The once overwhelming feeling of being out of place started to fade, replaced by a deep sense of purpose and a belief in herself that she had never known before. She was no longer just a small-town girl trying to get by. She was a part of something bigger, something that had the power to change lives. Daniel's guidance and unwavering faith in her had unlocked a side of herself she hadn't known existed. One evening, as Sarah was wrapping up a long day at the office, Daniel called her into his office. She had become accustomed to these impromptu check-ins, and they had always been a source of encouragement for her. As she walked into his office, she noticed that his demeanor was different, more serious than usual. "Sarah, come in," Daniel said, motioning for her to sit. He looked thoughtful, his hands steepled in front of him as he looked at her intently. "I've been watching your progress, and I'm incredibly impressed with how far you've come. You've truly exceeded my expectations." Sarah smiled, grateful for the praise, but she could sense there was something more to the conversation. "Thank you, Daniel. I've been working hard, and I've learned so much already, but I'm still trying to find my footing." Daniel leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "I understand that, but I think it's time we take your role to the next level. I've been considering a new project that I want you to lead. It's a big responsibility, but I believe you're ready." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "A new project? Let it?" The words felt almost surreal. She had never imagined being given that kind of responsibility. She had only just begun to find her place within the organization, and now Daniel was offering her a chance to lead something of her own. "What kind of project?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel smiled. "It's a community outreach program. We've been working on a plan to provide resources and support to underprivileged communities, and I think you're the perfect person to bring this vision to life. You have the heart, the passion, and the understanding of what it's like to struggle, and that's exactly what we need." Sarah felt a rush of emotions flood through her. The idea of leading a project like this was both thrilling and terrifying. She had always wanted to make a real impact on people's lives, but now the responsibility was hers. "I'm honored, Daniel," Sarah said, her voice filled with both gratitude and nervous excitement. "I won't let you down." Daniel's smile widened. "I know you won't. This project is more than just about resources. It's about connecting with people on a deeper level, showing them that they're not alone. You have a unique ability to do that, Sarah. I've seen it firsthand." As Sarah left Daniel's office, she felt a mixture of excitement and fear. She had been given an incredible opportunity, but with that opportunity came a level of responsibility she wasn't entirely sure she was ready for. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was so much more to learn, and yet, Daniel's faith in her made her believe that she could rise to the challenge. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, planning sessions, and brainstorming. Sarah worked tirelessly, collaborating with the team to bring the outreach program to life. She was amazed at how quickly everything came together. What had once seemed like a daunting task now felt like a mission she was meant to lead. But despite her growing confidence, there were moments when self-doubt crept in. Was she doing enough? Was she truly making a difference? It was during one of these moments of uncertainty that Sarah found herself back at the hospital, sitting by her mother's bedside. It had been a few weeks since her last visit, and she had missed spending time with her. As she sat there, holding her mother's hand, Sarah realized how much she had changed in such a short period of time. She had started this journey unsure of herself, unsure of her place in the world. But now, sitting beside her mother, she knew that she had found it. "How are you feeling, Mom?" Sarah asked, her voice soft and comforting. Her mother smiled, her frail hands gripping Sarah's. "Better, dear. But it's not just about feeling better physically. It's about knowing that I have you in my corner. You've always been so strong, Sarah, and I'm so proud of you." Sarah blinked back tears. Her mother's words hit her harder than she expected. It had been so easy for Sarah to get caught up in the rush of her new life, to focus on all the work that needed to be done, but in that moment, she realized that the most important thing was right in front of her. Her family, the people she loved, the people she was doing all of this for. "I'm doing it for you, Mom," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm doing it for all of us." Her mother's eyes sparkled, and she nodded. "I know you are. And you're doing more than you realize. You're making the world a better place, Sarah." Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Her mother was right. She had been given the chance to make a real difference, not just in her own life, but in the lives of others. And she wasn't going to waste it. As Sarah left the hospital later that evening, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The outreach project was just the beginning, but it was a beginning she knew she was ready for. She had already come so far, and now, with the love and support of her family, she was ready to take on whatever came next. As Sarah stepped into the office that morning, she felt a surge of excitement. The first phase of the community outreach program was about to launch, and everything she had worked for over the past few weeks was finally coming to fruition. The feeling of responsibility still loomed over her, but it was no longer something that paralyzed her. It was something that motivated her. She had spent hours, days, and nights planning, strategizing, and refining every detail, and now it was time to see it all come together. Daniel had been incredibly supportive throughout the entire process, but this was her moment to take charge, to make it her own. As Sarah sat down at her desk, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Daniel, a brief but encouraging message. "I know you've got this. I'll be at the event this evening, but you're leading the charge today. Make it count." His words gave her a sense of pride, knowing that he trusted her to lead this initiative. She had come a long way from the shy, unsure woman who had walked into the foundation just a few months ago. With a deep breath, Sarah looked over the schedule for the day, mentally preparing herself for the busy hours ahead. There were meetings with local community leaders, discussions with volunteers, and, of course, the outreach event in the evening. But Sarah felt more prepared than she had in a long time. She had grown not just in her skills, but in her confidence, and today, she was going to prove it. The first few meetings went smoothly. Sarah found herself navigating the discussions with ease, listening intently to the needs of the community and offering thoughtful suggestions. The excitement she had felt in the morning only grew as the day went on. She wasn't just the person in charge. She was the person who could make a difference, and it felt empowering. As the sun began to set, Sarah and her team arrived at the venue for the outreach event. The venue was buzzing with energy, volunteers setting up tables, arranging supplies, and greeting the attendees. Sarah took a moment to step back and observe. It was surreal to see all of her hard work coming to life in front of her. She had envisioned this moment so many times, but now that it was real, it felt even more powerful than she had imagined. When the event officially kicked off, Sarah took the stage to speak to the crowd. She had always been a little nervous about public speaking, but tonight, she felt calm, confident, and ready. As she looked out at the crowd, many of whom she had been working with closely over the past few weeks, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This wasn't just about her success. It was about the success of the community, the people who had put their trust in her and the foundation. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Sarah began, her voice strong but warm. "This event is the beginning of something special. We've worked together to create a program that will make a real difference, and I'm honored to be a part of it. But more than that, I'm honored to work alongside all of you, because each of you has a role to play in making this community a better place." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Sarah wasn't just speaking to the crowd. She was speaking to the heart of the program she had helped build. As the evening progressed, Sarah moved through the event, speaking with attendees, answering questions, and helping wherever she could. She was amazed by the impact the outreach program was already having. The connections she had made, the lives she had touched, were now a part of something bigger than herself. As the event wound down, Daniel approached Sarah, a proud smile on his face. "You did it, Sarah," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "This event was everything I hoped it would be and more. You've made this program something people will remember." Sarah smiled back, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. "I couldn't have done it without the team, Daniel. This was a group effort, and I'm just proud to be a part of it." Daniel nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "You led the charge, Sarah. You took this program from an idea to a reality. That's something extraordinary." Sarah's heart swelled with emotion. She had never imagined that one small act of kindness, a decision to help a stranger in need, would lead her to this moment. She had started as a nurse, unsure of her place in the world, but now, she was a leader, someone who had the power to change lives. As the event ended and the volunteers began to pack up, Sarah stood at the back of the room, watching the people who had come together to make a difference. She realized that, just like Daniel had said, this was about more than just the program. It was about connection, about showing people that they mattered. And Sarah knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning of her journey. The challenges ahead were still there, but now, she was ready for them. She had found her purpose, and she was determined to see it through, not just for herself, but for everyone who needed the support, the care, and the kindness she had to offer. The months that followed the outreach event were some of the most fulfilling of Sarah's life. She had found her rhythm at the foundation, and the community outreach program she had spearheaded was flourishing in ways she had never imagined. Her role had evolved into something more than she had ever expected. She was no longer just someone who was learning the ropes. She was now a key figure in the foundation, trusted to make important decisions, lead new projects, and continue to make an impact on the community. The confidence that Daniel had instilled in her had paid off, and Sarah felt more certain of herself and her abilities with each passing day. But as successful as the outreach program was becoming, Sarah was still haunted by a sense of uncertainty that crept in from time to time. Despite all the progress, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something missing, something that needed to be addressed before she could fully embrace the future she had built for herself. One evening, as she sat in her office, looking over reports from the latest initiative, she received an unexpected call. It was her mother. Sarah hadn't spoken to her in a few days, and she felt a rush of guilt. Her mother's health had been improving, but Sarah had been so caught up in her work that she hadn't been able to visit as much as she wanted. She picked up the phone with a sense of urgency, hoping everything was okay. "Sarah," her mother's voice came through the line, soft but clear. "I've been thinking a lot about you. I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished." Sarah's heart warmed at her mother's words, but she could hear a hint of sadness in her voice. "Mom, what's going on? Is everything all right?" There was a long pause before her mother spoke again. "I just want you to know that you've always been the most important thing in my life, and I don't want you to forget that. I know how much this work means to you, but don't lose sight of what truly matters, the people you love." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She knew her mother was right. She had been so focused on her work, on the mission she was so passionate about, that she had neglected the one person who had always been there for her. "I haven't forgotten, Mom," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "I promise, I'll make more time for you. I'm sorry if I've been distant." Her mother chuckled softly, though it was clear she wasn't upset. "You've always had a big heart, Sarah. Just don't forget to take care of yourself and the people who care about you." The conversation ended on a note of love and reassurance, but it stayed with Sarah long after she hung up the phone. She had been so focused on the work she was doing, so determined to prove herself, that she had lost sight of the balance she needed in her life. She realized that while helping others was important, she needed to also nurture the relationships that mattered most. The next morning, Sarah made a decision. She needed to reconnect with her mother and prioritize the personal aspects of her life that had been pushed aside. She wasn't going to let the momentum of her career consume her completely. She had built something incredible, but she needed to remember that love and connection were at the heart of everything she did. That weekend, Sarah drove to her mother's house, determined to spend quality time with her. When she arrived, her mother was waiting for her with a warm smile, and they spent the entire day talking, laughing, and reminiscing. It was exactly what Sarah had needed. She realized that the success she had found at the foundation, the work that had given her so much purpose, was only meaningful because of the love and support she had from those closest to her. As Sarah sat with her mother, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had worked hard to get to where she was, but now, she understood that it was the people she loved, and who loved her, that made everything worthwhile. The following week, Sarah returned to the foundation with a renewed sense of balance. She was more focused than ever, but she no longer felt the need to prove herself. She had already proven what she was capable of, and now, it was time to take her work to even greater heights, while also making room for the relationships that kept her grounded. Her first step in this new chapter was to implement a new mentorship program within the foundation, where she would guide younger volunteers and help them grow in their roles. It was a way for her to give back, to share the lessons she had learned along the way, and to continue building a sense of community. Daniel noticed the change in Sarah. He saw her growth not just as a leader, but as a person. He could tell she was more present, more at ease with herself and her work. One evening, after a meeting, he pulled her aside. "I've been watching you," Daniel said, his voice sincere. "You've come a long way, Sarah. But more importantly, you've found a balance that will take you even further. I'm proud of you." Sarah smiled, grateful for his mentorship and for the trust he had placed in her from the very beginning. "Thank you, Daniel. I couldn't have done it without your support." Daniel nodded, his smile widening. "I think you're ready for anything." Sarah knew that the journey ahead would still come with its challenges, but for the first time, she felt truly prepared. She had found her place, not just at the foundation, but in the world, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that the love and balance she had with her family would always be her anchor. As Sarah walked into the office that morning, she couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. The mentorship program she had implemented was thriving, and the impact it had made on the younger volunteers was beyond what she had hoped for. The foundation was stronger than ever, and she could see the positive changes happening not only in the communities they were helping, but also within the organization itself. Sarah had found a way to balance her career and her personal life, something she had struggled with in the past, and now she was able to give her all to both. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that the work she was doing was meaningful, and that it was also giving others the chance to find their own purpose, just as she had. That afternoon, Sarah had a meeting scheduled with Daniel. As she walked into his office, she noticed he was sitting at his desk, reviewing some paperwork. He looked up as she entered and smiled. "Sarah, I've been meaning to talk to you about something," he said, his tone serious but warm. Sarah felt a wave of curiosity, wondering what was on his mind. "What's going on, Daniel?" she asked. He leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I've been so impressed with your work, not just here at the foundation, but with everything you've done in the community. You've really made a name for yourself. But I think it's time you take the next step." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean by the next step?" she asked, unsure of what he was suggesting. Daniel smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "I think it's time for you to take on a larger role. I want to offer you a position as the director of the foundation. You've earned it, Sarah. You've proven yourself time and time again, and I have no doubt you'll continue to lead us to even greater success." Sarah stood frozen for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. This was the opportunity she had been working toward, but it also felt like a huge responsibility. She had come so far from the shy, uncertain woman who had walked into the foundation all those months ago. Now, she was being offered a chance to lead in a way she had never imagined. "I don't know what to say," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've worked so hard to get here, and now this? I never thought I'd be in this position." Daniel stood up and walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've earned this, Sarah. You've earned the trust of everyone here. I've seen the way you lead, the way you care for others, and I know you'll be an incredible director. I wouldn't be offering this if I didn't believe in you." Sarah felt her heart swell with pride and gratitude. The weight of the decision was heavy, but she knew deep down that this was what she was meant to do. She had found her purpose, and now, it was time to step up and embrace the next chapter of her journey. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady. "I won't let you down." Daniel's smile grew wider, and he extended his hand to her. "I know you won't. Welcome to the next phase of your journey, Sarah." As Sarah shook his hand, she felt a surge of excitement and anticipation. This was just the beginning. She had come so far, but she knew that there was still so much more she could do, so much more she could give. The foundation was already making a difference, but now, with her at the helm, it was poised to make an even greater impact. That evening, Sarah took a moment to reflect on everything that had led her to this point. She had started as a woman unsure of herself, unsure of her place in the world, but now she was a leader, a person who had found her voice and her purpose. She had worked hard to build something meaningful, and now, she had the chance to help others do the same. She thought back to the day she had met Daniel, the man who had seen something in her that she hadn't seen in herself. His belief in her had changed everything. It was because of him that she had taken the first steps toward her true potential. And now, she was ready to take those next steps on her own. The journey ahead would be challenging, but Sarah knew that she was ready for it. She had the experience, the heart, and the determination to make a difference. And as she looked ahead, she knew that the future was bright. Sarah's story had only just begun, and the impact she would make in the world was limitless. She had found her purpose, and now, she was ready to share it with the world.